Friday night, I decided to go to a small town 100 miles from my home for the weekend. James, an old friend of mine, invited me to spend time at his country house. I packed my bags, put gas in the car, and drove out. The road was familiar and quiet until I turned onto a country highway leading to town. Near midnight, I noticed that I was running low on gas. I looked at the map and saw that the nearest gas station was a couple miles away. When I pulled up, the gas station looked abandoned. All the windows were boarded up, and there wasn't a soul around. However, the pumps were running. I started to fill up when I noticed an old car coming up the road. It stopped a little ways away, and two men got out. They were dressed in dark clothes and looked grim. I sensed that something was wrong. These men looked suspicious, and they were looking at me with obvious interest. I quickly finished refueling, got in my car, and drove on. In my rearview mirror, I saw them get into their car and follow me. My heart started pounding. I increased my speed, hoping they were just going in the same direction. The road became more and more winding and deserted. There were no houses or signs around. The men were still following me, and I began to panic. Suddenly, my car stalled. I pulled over to the side of the road and tried to start the engine, but to no avail. In my rearview mirror, I saw their car stopped in the distance. They got out and headed towards me. I jumped out of the car and ran into the woods without looking back. The branches were whipping my face. The ground was going out from under my feet, but I ran as fast as I could. After a while, I stopped, listened, and realized that the footsteps behind me were louder. They were following me. The forest was dark and quiet. I tried to walk as quietly as I could, but every movement seemed too loud. My heart was pounding in my chest, fear choking my thoughts. I knew that if they caught me, nothing good would happen. The sound of footsteps came closer, and I ran again. This time I noticed a light ahead. It was an old house. In desperation, I ran towards it, hoping I could hide or find help. The house turned out to be empty. I stepped inside, closed the door, and listened. Footsteps stopped somewhere nearby. I hid in one of the rooms, trying not to make any noise. A few minutes passed, and I heard someone open the door. They entered the house and started looking for me. I held my breath, listening to every sound. Suddenly, I heard them start to whisper. One of them said to check the second floor. The footsteps receded, and I decided to seize the moment. I quietly left the room and headed for the exit. It was dark outside, but I could see the outline of trees and bushes. I ran towards the road, hoping to find a hitchhiking car. After a while, I heard the sound of a motor. In the distance, I saw headlights coming toward me. It was a truck. I ran out into the road and started waving my arms. The truck stopped, and the driver, a man in his 50s, opened the door. I quickly got into the cab and asked him to take me to town. We drove in silence, and I could feel the tension slowly fading away. I told him what had happened, and he listened attentively. Soon we reached the town, and I thanked him for his help. He offered me a place to sleep at his house, and I accepted. The next morning, I woke up and felt that I was safe. The driver, whose name was Mike, offered me breakfast, and I took him up on his offer. After eating, I called James and explained what had happened. He came to pick me up, and we went to my car. We found it in the same spot where I had left it. James helped me fix it, and we drove to his country house. All the way there, I thought about those men and what they wanted to do. I realized I was lucky to get out alive. After our arrival at James's house, I felt a little safer, but I was still tense. James suggested that I stay a few days to recover, and I agreed. We spent the evening discussing what had happened and trying to figure out who those people might have been and what they wanted. James was concerned and offered to report what had happened to the locals, but I insisted that it shouldn't be done. I just wanted to forget the whole thing and hoped they wouldn't find me. The next morning, James and I decided to spend the day outdoors to distract ourselves. We went fishing at a local lake. The water was calm, and the birdsong calmed my nerves a bit. We caught fish and talked about various things, trying not to bring up recent events. In the evening, we went back to the house and cooked dinner from the fish we had caught. It was one of the few times I felt relaxed. On the third day, I decided to return home. James offered to come with me, so I wouldn't be alone on the road, but I assured him I could manage. We said our goodbyes, and I hit the road. The drive home seemed endless, and I kept looking around to see if anyone was following me. As I got closer to home, the tension gradually eased. When I got home, I felt a great sense of relief. My apartment seemed like a safe haven where I was safe. But in the night, I heard the noise again. It was the same footsteps I had heard in the woods. I looked out the window and saw a car parked outside the house. My heart sank. They had found me. I decided not to stay in the apartment. I quickly packed my things and went out the back door. I ran to my car and drove to the nearest motel. There I rented a room and tried to calm down. The motel was old and quiet, which gave it an ominous look, but I was too tired to pay attention to that. I fell asleep, hoping they wouldn't find me here. In the morning, I decided that I needed to deal with this situation somehow. I called James and told him what had happened. He advised me to stay at the motel until he got here. I agreed and started waiting. A few hours passed and I heard a knock on the door. It was James. He looked worried but determined. We discussed what to do next. James suggested that we contact people he knew who could help deal with these people. We decided that I would stay with him for now, so as not to attract attention. We drove to his friends who lived out of town. Their house was well protected and away from crowded places. I felt more at ease at James's friend's house. We told them everything that had happened. They turned out to be ex-military and were willing to help. They offered us a plan to keep me safe and find out who these people were and what they wanted. We decided to investigate without attracting the attention of the police. A few days passed, and we started gathering information. One of James's friends, Mark, found out that the men who were following me were involved in shady dealings. They were involved in blackmail and extortion, and apparently I was an accidental target. We decided that we had to somehow get them to leave me alone. We devised a plan, which was to set a trap for them. We contacted them, pretending that we had information they might be interested in. They agreed to meet at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. We prepared for this meeting by bringing everything we needed for self-defense. On the day of the meeting, we arrived at the warehouse early and hid. When they arrived, we waited for the right moment. They came inside, and we caught them off guard. A short fight ensued, during which we managed to disarm them. We made them confess their intentions and recorded it on video. With this evidence, we decided not to take any more risks and handed everything over to the right people who could deal with them. The men were arrested on other charges, and I finally felt safe. After that incident, I tried to stay away from unfamiliar places and people. James and his friends helped me get my life back to normal. I still have nightmares sometimes, but I am grateful to be alive and to have friends like that to help me in my time of need.